Yeah, so just going to make an IPT part for this in English units and inch units. Um, let's see. But and this is one way that it was extruded and started, how it's shown. You could have done this a number of ways. You could have done it from, just because they in the assignment extruded this way doesn't mean you had to. You could have done, the square extrusion, whatever, half inch thick, and it would, neither would have been right or wrong or better. In fact, when I would look at it, probably a shape like this with, I would probably tend to draw it as the square shape, not the little skinny rectangle and extrude that way. I would just look at this and almost start with a 3 1/4 by 3 inch square and extrude it a half inch up and then start working. That probably would have been my natural flow, but either way is fine. So this is the way the book kind of started their extrusion. So um, yeah. So you can use, the hints like in the book, there'll always be kind of hint sketches you can tell how they kind of started there. But you could choose to change that up if you see that geometry different or if something looks easier. Yeah. But let's go. So I'll open a new file here to do this one. New part file here. I've got my English folder open. Standard part. Let's go. I'm doing my due diligence. I'll do a quick save as here. This is 116 in class. Just turn on my sketch planes for just a minute so I can see my. So those are my own images just to make them. Yeah, they weren't in the textbook image. If you can see it at chapter 116, it's horrible. Yeah, everything is there if you can follow the extension lines. Yeah. It's pretty. What? Say it again. Oh, yeah, yeah. So I always, my go-to on my model browser is always to expand my origin tab for sure. I like this always open when I'm drawing usually, just because it gives me access to those preloaded geometry. And so I just right click on them and hit visibility. This will be a real common thing. You have so many right click menus in Inventor. Every seems like everything is selectable and right clicked, and then there's an expanded menu there. But yeah, some previous versions, probably I'm used to previous versions of Inventor where these were, it seemed like some of them they were automatically on in some previous versions of Inventor. And I know that I can toggle them on to always come on initially. Not that everybody, it's my workflow that I like to see my planes when I start. Once they become annoying to me, I just turn them off. But um, and sometimes it's helpful to turn on the center point. That's the origin point, so you can turn that on as well. And then it is selectable. I tend to not do that as much as I just project that geometry into my sketch. So I do project my center point geometry usually always in my sketch, whether I project it or I select it from that side and I project to it. Or what'll also, if you start your sketch with your line starting on the center point, it'll kind of constrain everything to that center point. So there's a lot of different ways to lock into the origin. You could dimension to it, but yeah. So let's do 116 though. So I'm just going to go. I'm going to do this on this will be my front view plane here. Um, and that's, technically this probably could be, if I was thinking the longest width here, this is probably a better choice for my front view, this one here, the 3.25. But so, I can kind of be critical of the way they started this object in a lot of different ways, but it's okay. So let me jump off real quick and let this guy log in. So I'm going to technically just start it wrong, but that's okay because all we're doing is getting used to Inventor. We're not so much as analyzing it from a total drafting perspective yet. But I do think there are some issues with starting it this way. This is a shorter width dimension than this. There isn't any increased like visibility of features to start on this edge versus this edge as a front view. So I would elect to probably choose this as my front view edge here, And I think we learned last semester it's not uncommon in some drafting environments to actually use probably this view as like what looks as the top view in this as maybe the front view, and set this down as the bottom. Then you would have the most part, you'd have the longest width, the most part detail in your front view. And that's how we'll detail like flanges and stuff. They tend to stand them up on edge. And so I could even think that maybe that's the best front view is actually this top view that would expose all of the features of this. Yeah, okay, cool. So anyway, I just want remember to think of that stuff and think that sometimes out of books and assignments like this, they can be drawn wrong, or maybe not. From a drafting perspective, maybe not the best choice of view. So I'm gonna do it wrong. Here we go. I'm gonna go against everything I've just said and draw it like this is here. So it's what, a 1/2 inch by 3 inch rectangle is what I'm gonna, and then I'll extrude it 3 1/4. And I'll do this on my front view plane here. So here's me going to a new sketch. Here's my rectangle command. Heck yeah, I'll just slap this rectangle on here and then I'll dimension it. So it's 3 inches this way. And then it's 1/2 inch this way. So I'll show you another way that I constrain stuff. You see me just pick a point on my object and then do a coincident constraint and lock it into the center point. Sometimes if you have to do like, that's all it takes to constrain this thing. Dimensionally, this thing is constrained. Just needs to be constrained in model space. So it would work the same way you've seen me do the other ones, which is maybe pick a point and then pick the center point, which sometimes I have to just come over here to my browser and pick this, and that'll snap that over there. If that's where I want it, that'd be fine. It is constrained there. Sometimes, here's another way to constrain is maybe I'll just constrain this like equally over the origin here, where I'll center it up here. So another way I constrain a lot of stuff is horizontal and vertical constraints here. So I feel like these are a lot of the ways I usually constrain my sketches. Sometimes I will do a coincident constraint like I've done, but more commonly I probably use like vertical and horizontal constraints. And so how I would do that maybe here is I could say, well, here's and remember these, I like that whatever one you choose here, they'll have the little projections. So you know that, oh, if you're choosing horizontal, depending on what plane you're on, it'll look horizontal, but sometimes it'll look vertical. So I just, I never really try to remember which plane I'm on and which one's going to be horizontal. I'll just pick one, and if it's the wrong one, I pick the other one because they give those little projections when you pick either a vertical constraint or a horizontal constraint. But like, so a way I might constrain this, and a way I constrain geometry sometimes is I'll pick like, okay, this vertical constraint, and I'll say, hey, here's a midpoint of that, and I'll say I'm going to have this midpoint be constrained to maybe I can choose an axis here, or I could choose the center point here too. So I'll say, oh, the center point, and that will lock it down kind of in the vertical direction. So that's why two of my sides are now constrained. And then I might do a vertical constraint on the midpoint of this line and to the center point. And now I'm actually constrained kind of symmetrical over the center, over the origin point. Not that that would matter, but it's just a quick way to constrain too, with two horizontal vertical constraints, not really any dimensions or anything, just a dimensioned shape and then constrained. And so I do that a lot, that kind of a constraint, and that's the one I'll do here. And uh, and I could have constrained it to be, once I picked a horizontal constraint, I could have chose this line to the center point, and it would have put that one flush to the bottom, anyway, and it wouldn't have mattered. I just have so many options to constrain. Yeah, so I'm going to say that's finished. This needs to be 3 1/4 extrusion. So I'll extrude it 3 1/4. And it doesn't matter if I come towards me or away from me. Just you can tell in the drawing that I've extruded away, and that's just so I can expose the drawing in your view. And sometimes they do that in your book too, so you can see the actual sketch that's turned on. But it wouldn't matter. You could do this one equal over each plane as well, like this, one way or the other way. It just, yeah. For a one-off part, it's not going to matter. Maybe I'll put mine in the center here. Okay. That was 3.25. Yeah, 3.25 extrusion. Um, I did mine in the center, but like I said, you can play around with this and see the differences. Yeah. Now if I'm going to draw, now from here, I'm just going to draw and probably use the surface features. So, this is why I don't always need my planes on. They can be a little bit redundant. I can always get back to them if I need them to draw there. Um, uh, so I'm just going to draw the little round extrusions here, or maybe I'll even add the fillets now. So I could have, yeah, I'm going to add the fillets here, which I think is oh, I don't know, what is it? This is a 1 inch. So this is concentric as well, the concentric little part here, center concentric to this fillet here. So I think I'll put in my, what is this, like a 1/2 inch fillet? 1/2 inch radius? And I think this is drawn by radius. Let me see. I can't even remember. Sometimes on this fillet, here's the fillet command for a modification on my, if I do fillet here, and then I'll jump into this corner. I think it's just a 1/2 inch fillet. Yeah. Is by radius. So I'll say okay. That's just because that's going to be my front view, right? So that's where that's the corner to fillet. I'll jump off real quick. And then I'm going to start a new sketch on that top surface there. Just wait for just a second. Is this sketch will be what? Let's see. Just a 1 inch diameter circle and a 1/2 inch diameter circle. Right. Send my computer to you guys again. There you go. All right, so my new sketch just starts here from this face, new sketch. I'm going to project this geometry because I'm going to use the concentric, the center point for this radius is what I'm going to use to lock in my circle, right? So I'm going to, this is what I mean when I go to draw, when I'm projecting geometry, I generally am like turning my objects in their 3D view so I can, be pretty particular in which edge I'm going to select here to project to, just because, like I said, it'll look through this object and be able to project, through this and pick up these other edges that aren't necessarily on my surface, which is handy because I can just project something that's on a different surface to my surface if that's helpful. In this case, I'm just going to do this one little radius here because it just has my center point that I can lock into here. So I don't need that on, so I'm going to turn this to construction material for me. It's not the end of the world if you don't. It's just that I just have this practice and then I'm just going to say a circle here from this center point that I have now to lock into, and I needed a 1 inch. It's a 1 inch diameter circle. And then I'm just going to do another circle that's a 1/2 inch, right? So I think I'm still in that command. And I'll do a 1/2 inch. That's all I'm going to do in this sketch. I could do more, right? Like this, like technically when I look at this part, I could, not that, I want to go back to here. All these sketches are in this top surface essentially. So I could start to bundle some of these sketches and put them into one um, and then use them for this extrusion and then use this for this extrusion. I could do all of these in this one sketch. And that might be beneficial. It could be too much and could be too little, maybe too busy of a sketch. But I feel like I'll choose to like separate my sketches and features if I feel like it's just going to be too busy and that's one of my factors for when I would choose to do like a new sketch with a new feature. But it doesn't require that every feature has to be its own sketch, right? Like I can share sketches for features, and so sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's not. I mean, And so in this case, maybe I'll just do this first extrusion here, and then maybe I'll do a couple of these sketches together, or maybe I'll do this one, then I'll do these two or something. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, let me see here. So that's my finished sketch. Let me just bounce out of here so I activate my hair. But you're talking this solid body here. Mhm. Right here. Yeah, yeah, I feel like this one here below my origin, this is going to be my main access to my features and sketches in I know to me it kind of makes a copy up here of the solid and then because it bundles it under what solid bodies I have in this part environment. And then of course if I had multiple different solids, then I can choose to find out which of my in my browser tree, which might not be able, I might not be clearly able to separate which features and sketches go with which solid. I would be able to figure that out here. It's yeah, and really this is going to be if yeah. Right now we're just going to make one solid, and so we won't even see what the difference of having multiple solids for a little while and what that would be. And there would be a strategy involved in why I would have multiple solids here. But for a lot of part files, it'll just be a single solid, right? Like a lot of parts will just be one solid. We want them to all be one feature. If I think of, yeah, anyway, I feel like if the way I kind of read this is like this is this tree from the origin below is kind of building everything that I build, and then it's kind of populating these folders though, is the way I kind of think it. And yeah, yeah. So and I think we will get to these. I don't know when in the book it gets to these, and so I'm kind of interested to know. But no, but this like I can kind of demonstrate what does happen. Like no, it's good. It's good. You don't want me to go off on a tangent. But and I kind of show this even on one other sketch, but I'll show you again. So I have this whole new sketch that I'm going to an extrusion of how far is this thing? It's going to be half inch tall. So I'm going to do this next extrusion, a half inch, extrude this. Of course, I have two different profiles I can choose. I'm just choosing this profile. I had multiple profiles. That's why it didn't choose for me automatically. So it needed me to choose which profile since I have multiple. This is the one that I want to build. That is usually it's your last data input. That's why 3.25 shows up for me. So it'll be a zero point 0.5 extrusion like this. This is going, and so what I'll point out to you, just this is going to become a joined solid with the existing solid that I have right here, right? Because and I think this is pretty much default always going to be like in a part file is going to be like another joined solid, which means they're going to be kind of uniform. There's not going to be a separation of solids, at least according to the program. Those are going to be the unit. They're like it's almost like a machine block that would have to be, this thick, and then this would all be machined off to create this. Or it would be 3D printed that way, and they would all be joined. It's like one solid. But I can choose this little plus button, which we don't need to do yet, but I'm just going to show you. This is how you would create a new solid. If this extrusion I did want to eventually become its own part, I could choose this as a new solid, and it's going to populate under this solid bodies tab. It's going to populate a new solid with its associated features and sketches. And so I can kind of separate these two and make two different parts. And then I can actually export them out of each other. But that's going to be a little bit next level learning, I think. But we can do what we call as like part assemblies. So I can actually just from a part file, I can build a pretty complicated almost an assembly, and then I can export all those parts into an actual assembly. So and that's a lot of people model that way. They kind of build like what I call part assemblies and then export parts. And in order to do that, you have to make separate solids though. So that's a little high, that's down the road a little ways. But and I'll just say the reason why you would want to do that is because what you're doing is you're building the relationship of how all the parts are going to work together in an assembly. And instead of having to make each individual part in its own little part file, and you got like 15 or 20 different little parts, you can actually build them in a part assembly. And then when you go into the assembly type folder, a .iam file, it is so quick to constrain those parts together because Inventor has something called a ground and a root. And it'll let you just like, oh, I know where I live in that part. I can go there in this assembly. And it's a really fast way to make an assembly with separate parts. Anyway, I can't say this book gets into that, but I will get into that. So cool. But that's really cool. So I'm just going to keep mine as a join solid. I like to point out anyway, because you don't even know what those selections are. We know to join and cut, but maybe, and this is how we would make a separate solid. So I'll say, okay, mine's a join solid, though I still only have one solid, and then it's populating whatever it is. Now I gotta do my next sketch right here. And so I'm gonna do another sketch on the same surface here. New sketch. So if I just take a look at, which I think on canvas is a little easier to see what the next sketch profile is, it's this one. And I've kind of clearly showed that I projected at least just two edges of that top surface to be able to constrain to. So I've just kind of I've projected the right and this bottom edge, and then that's where my this whole sketch has been drawn essentially, and then it's these two dimensions here are the ones that are actually constraining it. So I'm going to kind of proceed this way. So I'll project those two, and then I'm going to pull this up on my other screen so I can kind of review it and follow it. So I'm going to project. Here's my project geometry. I told you I use this all the time. And I'm just going to spin around and just project this particular piece of geometry and this particular piece. I am in Sketch, yes. I've already chose to do a new sketch on that face, on this face surface. Yep. So that's my sketch plane. I'll just turn those into construction materials. Doesn't really matter if you do or not, but I do. And then I can go back to kind of this top view. So I'm really nice uh, and so now this feature is kind of a weird profile. I could and so what I'm going to sketch mine out, and I'm not going to dimension it till I come back to it. Um, so I might sketch this. Yeah. I did. I projected, actually not project cut edges. I projected geometry. Yeah. So when you project geometry, it wants you to select, and I just picked that edge and this edge here. Yeah. And then they become yellow, right? That's a yellow. That's a projected feature. And then I just selected them with the crossing and chose construction material because they were like that when you originally. Yep. A lot of people will keep these as solid, and you can eventually when you project and then I draw like new geometry, new polygons. If my projected geometry is solid lines, it'll cut across my stuff, my other maybe closed polygons. And so when I go to actually go out to, I showed a couple people this too. The only reason is I'm simplifying the profiles that I pick when I extrude. If I have solid lines, they'll cut up my profiles sometimes. And it still isn't the end of the world. Like even if you have like a projected line that cuts through your sketch material, it's just going to kind of chop it up to where you have to do multiple selections to extrude sometimes, and that's not the end of the world, by the way. This is just me like having worked with it, and I prevent that. Even though this isn't going to cut across it's actually not going to even cut across my actual new sketch that's right here. But what I'm looking at here, just to start this, is I'll show you one little trick that's I think unique to Inventor, and the way you kind of make this little like turn right here. Like when I look at this, I'm like, well, I draw, how do I want to draw this? I don't know. Like a lot of times I will draw these as sharp corners and then use fillets. That can run into a problem a little bit if you have like fillets that are running into fillets, and then there might be a line segment that gets stuck in there, and so your sketch geometry gets like really little pieces. I don't know how to explain that, but like it almost looks like this radius is almost running into this radius, and I'm not sure if there's a lot of like linear length across them. Here there is a little bit of a line, and here there's definitely lines between the fillet radiuses. Here, if I drew this out as kind of a square and then filleted both, I think I'd end up with a weird sketch. So I don't know. You can be kind of strategic here in how to do. I think fillets can kind of be tricky. You could do these as circles as well. I saw a few people sketching using circles and then just chopping and trimming them. And I think that's fine too. Like let me show you one kind of handy little technique here though, which is like I said, is unique to Inventor. So if I'm in a line command and I'm drawn like down here, I'm just going to draw this side. I just picked anywhere on here, by the way. I haven't constrained this, but I can let me see how this, if you end your line and click and hold, you can kind of like sweep like this. So what I'm doing here, what I'm doing, so I'd like you to practice this little technique because it's kind of handy, especially when you have like little slotted features like this. It's just kind of this like just a next level like line command. Just draw your line. Then when you when I left click here, I just left click and hold, and then I just sweep around like this. And whichever way you sweep, see now my fillet's going the other way because I swept the other way. But you're able to do kind of like quarter rounds if you follow like there's like a quarter round, or you could do like full half rounds, semicircles essentially. That can be handy for like fillets that are gonna end up being like really close to each other. So let me show you again. It's just like my line command down, uh, click here, and then I just want this thing to sweep this way. Oh, I think I gotta sweep the other way. I don't know, it's backwards. Might take some practice. Oh, mine has always wanted to go the other way. Let me figure out which way I want it to go. Maybe I'll go opposite the way I think it needs to go. I almost have to sweep almost like counterclockwise when I do it. Because what I'm looking to do is just do kind of like a quarter circle like this. And then I left click again and it drops it in there. What it does is it kind of applies the tangent constraint. I can see it there. It's tangent to so that kept that radius tangent to that line that I drew. And now I'm coming back this way. I'm still in the line command. I'm just going to click here, however long it goes, left click and hold, and then I can sweep around, and then it gets those projection lines where I can kind of pick, uh, that I want to do this as a full semicircle, and then I just let off the left click and keep going here now. Oh yeah, and then it comes in here and it does a little sweeping circle like that way. I'm gonna do like a little half. And then I'm gonna come up a little ways, and then it gets a little more complicated here, right? I don't know. I'm just gonna end my sketch for just a minute there. And then I'm into right here essentially as far as I've sketched. Now I've got to kind of come back the other way and back. I probably could have done that, and so I might pick up and do that now. I'm just going to draw a little bit of a line. Then I'm going to do that way a quarter circle, and then I think I'm going to draw a little bit more line, and then sweep that up again, and then back around. So I'm going to try to do that. Let's see if I can. After you draw it, oh, it's going to let me with dimensions. Should be. Mine's going to go here. I'm going to turn back this way, halfway, like this quarter turn. And then I want to draw just a little bit, I think, here. Oh, I got to undo that last one for me. Hook this back up. Yes, totally. Because if there's like geometry below you that it'll pick up, it may snap to some geometry potentially. I think it will be kind of a little bit of a trick to learn for a minute. That's mine right there. And then I'm going back up here. I can tell I'm just kind of a weird, like a little crooked here. I'm gonna go back and do that one more time. Mine's gonna be here, sweep it up. There's my, now I'm back up this way. Looking for, and I think I've told other people, watch for those like geometric constraints to show up. Like there's my one that's locking me into a vertical line. I know it looks like a horizontal constraint, but it's because I'm on this plane. And so the actual constraint it is horizontal. So that's, um, I do watch for those little like gray geometric constraint things to show up. That'll help me lock this in and not have it, I won't have to reapply like, like vertical and horizontal constraints. And I may not have to, if I'm watching for perpendicular constraints, I might not have to go and reapply those if I watch for them to show up. This is total eyeballing. Yes. I am just like free sketching is what I feel like I'm doing. I have no dimensions whatsoever. I know I'm roughly in this area. Yeah, exactly right. So back to here, I just need to turn this thing half round or quarter round like that. And then sketch over here and then quarter round like this. And then I've got some, I've got some geometry that doesn't quite line up, but maybe I can just like coincident constraint that to it. I'm going to pick this endpoint and coincident constraint it to that. I don't love that one though. This might jump for me. I don't know. I'm going to delete this real quick and do one more line. I want it to be a full like this half. I don't know. That might be okay. I'll try it. I'll just coincident constraint those two together. And now I'm going to go through and dimension this thing out. I mean, and I can start with some of the constraint dimensions. Like I can push this little point over to here. I could start actually doing the dimensioning of this thing now, potentially. Um, but so I think so it wouldn't matter how I proceed here, whether I lock this in and then constrain it or um, but it's totally movable, right? Like when I move this shape around, it could stretch on me kind of funny because there's really nothing constraining it. I'll move it back to where it was, but so now I'll just piece this. Maybe I'll start with my fillet radiuses. Maybe I'll apply all those, which I think are an 1/8 inch radius all the way around. I'm not sure if they're all explicitly called out great on here, but I do think all of the fillets are the same. They're all 0.125. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna apply that dimension to all those, just so they're uniform here. So let's see. Just looking to dimension those. Like I said, it's a smart dimension tool, so I don't have to pick out what kind of dimension it already knows. So I'm gonna say, oh, it's this one. I want it to be 0.125. And then I want all of them to be that way. So I can do equals. Like here's an equal constraint. Equal. I think I have to choose the one first to this one. This allows me to only have like one data input to change this sketch. I know if I individually dimension all these, that would be okay. That would be one way to do it. If I individually dimension them all and used the current dimension that I have, so they were all like an f of x dimension, that would be fine because I could just find the one. I would probably do this though, and then it's just easier to get in and see if I change that one fillet, they'll all change type of a thing. So I'm gonna say equal here, equal here. I think you have to kind of choose one and then choose which one's going to be equal, and you'll start to see them kind of doubling up. And so, like I'm going to say, oh yeah, this one's going to be equal to this one, and then so you always have to choose one to reference, kind of like the match properties. And I'm going to say, oh, this one's going to be equal. I don't know if that's true. Is that one going to be? I could have maybe messed that one up. I don't know. You have to go back out and in what? The sketch or mine? You always have to reference the one that you want to make equal. Yeah. And the only thing I hesitated on this one because I wasn't sure what that. I'm going to look at my drawing real quick and see. Is that I think it is the same radius, though. I think this ends up being a 1/4 inch across it. I think so. So I'm gonna use my equal constraint one more time. Equal this to this or whichever one there. I can pull this around to be. So now I've got my fillet radiuses locked down. Now I'm just gonna look at the other dimensions here. What the heck is this thing? It's a 1/2 inch this way and it's an 1.5 inches this way. I'll do those two dimensional constraints, 1.5 inches by half. That means just from, and I tend to choose when I do like line dimensions, I will tend to not choose the endpoints of the line as much as I will just the actual line to dimension to. Line to line here, I'm going to say is 0.5. The only reason why I don't is if you just pick an endpoint and there isn't a constraint on the line to hold it like horizontal or vertical, then it will allow it to like move in an angle and the dimension will only apply to that one endpoint of the line rather than the actual line. So that's me like picking line to dimension to here. So just, and this will just take some familiarity, especially once you go in and modify a sketch and you realize that your dimensions aren't holding it the way you wanted it to because maybe you picked an endpoint of a line and then the constraints aren't necessary to keep it how you want that line to stay. And so when you go to change a dimension, it kind of kicks it out sideways. And you're like, what the heck? And you're like, well, if you dimension from line to line here, it'll always keep them kind of parallel. And then I'm going to do the other way, which is an inch and a half. So I'm going to say from this line to this line here, it gives me as an inch and a half. And remember to use your drafting skills a little bit. Like remember that you're going to get in them, have to be the one to modify this. So making sure you can, just don't be sloppy with your dimensioning in some ways. Like make it so you can get in here and read it. Oh yeah, see here's something that's going on kind of weird there, but that might fix itself in a minute. Okay. What other dimensions do I have here? I've got I'll just kind of walk this around this right now. So I've got a 1 inch dimension from line to point, this particular point. And then I've got a 1 inch dimension from kind of point to point here. So it's kind of strange, kind of a strange dimensioning. Line to point. So I have a 1 inch from this line to this point, right? It's kind of yep, right here. I'll pull it out here. 1 inch. And then I have a 1 inch this way from point to point. This point, is that right? Or the same point? Maybe the same point. Let me look again. Same point. 1 inch that way, 1 inch this way. Okay. And then an inch and a half that way. And then I'll just see how that locks in. And that might not constrain it all that great. We'll see. 1 inch and 1 inch, an inch and a half. So I think it's the same point, just from this point to this point is 1 inch. And then it's inch and a half from this point to this point, right? I'll check that, but yeah, technically using the dimensions it has, it doesn't. I don't know how totally constrained it is. I'm going to put in these two dimensions and see what gets constrained on my geometry and what I might need to like troubleshoot a little bit. So point 0.325 and 0.5 is the way I'm going to constrain this point to my projected geometry. So this one is 0.5, right? Starts to constrain some of my geometry just there. And then I've got one more, which is 0.325. Ah, a lot of it's constrained. This is a hard sketch. Yeah, I I am recording this, but and there's a lot of different ways you could have got here. I mean, when I helped people that were doing it the other day, they had sketched totally different, and we were just able to chop away at it and get it constrained. But it can be tricky, right? And still, mine's not all there. I've got to kind of figure out why. And how I figure out why is I kind of flex the part that's not constrained. And what I mean by flex is I just grip it and try to pull it, and just kind of analyze like what is it doing and how do I lock it down. And there's going to be the problem is there's just such a it's like there's no wrong way to lock it down as long as it can get locked down. And and I'm going to show you a handy trick, but I'm going to use it with caution. I do a lot of my own work like this. Like I'm just trying to like strategically work in to make a sketch that is definitely modifiable and not over dimensioned, which you'll get those error when you try to over dimension or over constrain something, you'll get those things like you don't need that dimension. You're over constraining stuff. And so that's an indicator that you don't need that dimension. You've already got geometry that's constrained somehow, geometrically or dimensionally or something. But so you get those errors where it won't allow you to do it, or if it says it'll do it, but it'll do it as a driven dimension, which doesn't really help you constrain stuff necessarily. And what you'll see with a driven dimension is that it just puts it in parentheses like a reference dimension. So here, but what I'll show you, sometimes if you're troubleshooting a sketch like this, and I've just got a couple pieces missing now, I don't know how to constrain them. There is we have a little AI tool in here. It's this one right here. Right next to dimension is this little like dimension with a lightning bolt on it. This is an automatic dimension and constraints, but it's just going to blast some random crap. I'm going to tell you that right now. If I could have done it with my original sketch and it would have just chosen dimensions for me, and it would have chosen to apply geometric constraints. And so to me, it's not, I don't use it. I use it strategically to help me like narrow down like a few missing constraints here and there, especially on complicated sketches. But I don't use this as my go-to because it's not and try this and maybe I'll experiment with this on my next sketch as I'll show you what it'll do. And it's going to blast anything it needs to constrain. And then it's not going to be modifiable unless, I mean, it's going to be a mess to modify it if you need to. So it's not like a go-to tool. It's as good as AI has for us at this point. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose it. It brings up this auto dimension thing that says, hey, you only need two dimensions here to constrain this sketch now. And so, and you can choose what you're going to apply, dimensions or constraints. And if you hit apply, it's going to lock this down, but it shows whatever it wanted to choose to dimension it. And what it shows here was it shows, hey, I'm going to put 499 here to this center point. And then I don't know, I think it added maybe a tangent to tangent constraint here. But this is not what I want. I don't think this is the dimension that I want here anyway. It actually should be 0.5. And I think these should be lined up vertically. So although this chose to constrain it and it is constrained, it is not correct. It does show you what I use it for though is an indicator like, oh, I see what I might need to consider to lock this down. It's like it's like the center of that fillet doesn't know that I want it to be like lined up with the center of the fillet below it. So I use it strategically like this to say like, oh, I can see how I need to troubleshoot my sketch. And I'll just say remove them right now then. And it goes back to unconstrained. I'll say I'm done for a minute. So I use it as kind of a weapon. I like that it did this one. I guess it did put that tangent to tangent constraint and it left it there. If I undo that, it's back to here because it just doesn't know which one to be tangent to here. And so I think it's actually like, maybe I need to go tangent to tangent here. And that's all it took was a tangent constraint to lock that down. And I'm going to lock down my other one, not with a dimension like it did for me. I'm going to lock it down with this like vertical constraint, which is the horizontal constraint, unfortunately. It's because I'm on this plane. That's the way I want to constrain it, though. I'm going to say I'm going to take this point and I'm going to vertically constrain it to this point, and then it's locked in. But I could have done that a bunch of different ways. I could have just added a half-inch dimension from there to that edge too. But I just would have had a redundant dimension in my mind or in my sketch. So now if I change this to 1 inch, my whole thing moves over and it stays constrained as well. And that's called flexing. I mean, this is like we don't have to do that yet, but we will start flexing. If I really want to make sure my sketch is robust and moves how I want it to move, I can start changing some of these dimensions. Everything should stay constrained, and I should get the geometry to move how I'm expecting it to move. Yeah, this is done. So this sketch is finished. It's going to be an extrusion. How far up on this one? I think I show right here, maybe. It's an eighth of an inch up, just a little bit of a protrusion up an eighth of an inch. So now if I go into extrude, it's probably gonna only pick that profile because it's the only one that's available. It's closed. And I just need it to be 0.125, right? You don't have to worry about typing in inch. You don't have to worry about if you delete inch or whatever. It'll always add those units back on. So I'm gonna say, okay. And this is gonna be joined. I can make this a separate solid, but it's not. It's a joined solid. So there it is. Yes, correct. If it's purple, it means it's still got it's still not constrained. I delete them usually and then draw a new line. If I find a segment where yeah, maybe the way you sketched it and then the geometry starts squishing together and you have excessive line segments, I will tend to delete them and then draw in a new line that's maybe one continuous line would be my. I don't know if that helps, but that's what. Yeah. Yeah, don't be afraid to delete. Even this, I could have maybe had to delete something in between here and there, or so sometimes I will have to delete. And when I worked on a few other people that were sketching this, we had to delete some stuff. Um, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I mean, if you haven't drawn this since we did our example one, we kind of went to the one on steroids. If you probably would have been helpful to do like 1, 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 6 before we jump into 116 because it is the one that's the worst of the group. Oh yeah. Yes, good. That's a, I don't think you're alone in that, are you?
Turn the construction lights off.
I don't. That's a good question. To show their visibility or to, I think they do. I don't do that very often, but I think if I had to look, I think there is a way to like hide.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah, I don't know if I would hide them anyway, but because if you hide stuff in your sketch, that can be really hard to find again or know where it is or.
The way that we turn it off.
Oh, that's definitely layers, and no, not necessarily the same. At least I don't sketch like that myself. Yeah. So I keep my stuff. How I would separate that is I would start a new sketch or something, right? Like if I had like in this case, I could keep drawing. I'm in my sketch again. I could keep drawing in this sketch and draw the next features, but I think it's going to be a little busy, so I might just move on. And so the way I guess, I feel like I use my layering technique by doing multiple sketches. So that I would just have this sketch and then it's on kind of that layer. If I think of it that way, it's on that extrusion. And then I'm going to draw a new sketch now on the same face essentially. And yeah.
I was using the construction lines to get the like light.
Oh,
All so I can get the center points of the circle.
yeah.
I can't see where the circles are trimmed or not.
Yeah, and
So many lines.
that brings up a good point. I tend to not do as much construction line work. If you notice here, I didn't do any construction line work actually. So I will say that is something that I tend to break away from my CAD type sketching to my inventor sketching. I tend to draw more like I will occasionally draw a construction line here or there. And I'm going to do it on the next you'll see me do it in the next chapter 2 exercise. But there a lot of times I won't because I will use constraints rather than construction lines. So I will use dimensional and geometric constraints instead of using construction lines. I will just lock in the dimension that those have to be. And so yeah.
It's all connected.
So you feel successful. Oh.
So now it's on for toilet. Something black.
I gotta start recording again, otherwise I'm gonna forget. Okay. And I'm just gonna finish. We'll take a break here in just a minute. I'll try to finish my next 2 sketches here and finish this part, and then I'll take a break. Um, so I'm in here. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna take a quick gander here at how is this one being constrained? Well, this one is also kind of being constrained. It looks like all from just pretty much the same 2 edges. I think I've used a point here, the end of this, but it's a very similar way to lock in this sketch. And so this one will be kind of easier for me to draw. I'm just going to draw a line, use my little loop-de-loop. I don't know what that tool is called. I'm going to call it the loop-de-loop. I'm going to draw the little loop-de-loops in and out and all around this thing and just make my little L shape and then a few dimensions. And then I'll constrain it right there. So I'll kind of draw it where it goes. So I'm up here. I am going to project this kind of the same geometry, project geometry. This one and this one. Again, I'll turn those to construction. And then I'm going to draw my little loop-de-loop. It kind of comes, I don't know, down this way. And then it loops this way, half a turn. Then it comes this way. And then I hold and click and hold and comes all the way around like this. And then I come this way and I go the other way like this, halfway though, just like a quarter circle. And then I'm back up. I can project like that over there. I'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see. But I'm just going to kind of highlight this, come back to where I get a nice perpendicular constraint there, click and hold and back into there, and then okay it. Yeah, that's my center point there. But okay, now I'll just start putting some dimensions on here. I've got the fillets are the same size, I think, all the way around this thing. I think they're just 1/8 inch. Yes, 1/8 inch fillet. Yeah, so this one here is one way I told you could do it. You could definitely do like um, this one. I can tell how the sketch has two different 1/8 inch fillets, even though they're doing the same thing. And then this one's being driven by one of those. It's one of those has been chosen. So I don't love the way this one's been constrained in some ways. I'll probably use my equal again here. So I'll dimension one, that these fillets need to be 0.125. I mean, if I'm kind of doing like some, I'll think, I'll always show you what I'm kind of thinking in my mind. And if this part, these were always going to be the same, like I haven't looked ahead on what the other sketch is and what its fillets are, but if all the fillets on these embossings were all 1/8 of an inch, um, then I might want them all to be driven by the one dimension on this first sketch, which is, if I remember showing you up on your quick access toolbar, you have an f of x up here. These are everything that I've put in, right? This gets to be a pretty long list of sometimes redundant dimensions that could be hooked together. But the 1/8 inch fillet that we use first is probably in here. It's probably this dimension number 9 in sketch 3. Dimension 9 in sketch 3 is 1/8 of an inch. I can actually type in D9. I'll just show you here. I'm not going to, I mean, you don't have to do this. I just like to show some things that maybe aren't always in the book. If I click in here, you can also use like a little lowercase d, D9. It will accept this as a dimension because it's in my table. And there it is, like an f of x D9. And now if I went into sketch 3 and changed dimension 9 there, it would change over here too. So it's one way to like, that's a parametric concept there, but I minimize data inputs and maximize output, maybe. It's okay if I just have a new dimension that's doing the same thing now. Because I know at this point we'll be thinking of these sketches as kind of independent of each other, but really this is one part with very similar features. Could they be tied together? The answer would probably be yes. Should they be tied together? The answer is probably yes. But I'm going to make these all equal though.
So the engineer said, actually, I just want.
This one, then you're like, then you have to go undo the, yeah, undo the cobweb that you created. Yes. I don't think I did those right. I think I gotta do it. Sometimes I forget on my, oh, it already exists. Are all these 1/8 inch now? This one doesn't look like it is. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Equal. There, equal there. Equal. I forget my equal. I'm gonna be clumsy with Inventor for a minute. I have AutoCAD brain as well. And so it takes me a minute to kick my bad habits sometimes. Let me see what my other dimensions are here. I've got just so I've got everything equal as an 1/8 inch fillet weld or 1/8 inch fillet radius. Looks like I've got a 1.25 inches from point to point here and a 1 inch from point to point there. That should help me lock this in pretty close. At least geometric here. Let's see here. So 1.25 inches, an inch. Well, I can do it after this sketch. 1.25 inches, sorry. Because the last sketch on this is probably the nastiest one, actually. I think maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. This is 1 inch though here. So technically, I think this is like a pretty well constrained like geometric shape here, but it's not constrained in space whatsoever. That's why it's not black at all, right? I need the dimensions to lock it in relation to something, even though it's kind of locked into itself. Let's do the 2.75 and 1.5. Okay. I can never remember those once I jump off. 1.251. So I'm going to dimension from here to here. Maybe I'll pull it out this way so I can clearly see it as 0.75. That's locking down some of it. And then I just need from here to here. Wait. From here to there, that one. And it's 1.5, right? And that's constrained now. And I can clearly get into the sketch and see what to change it. It's kind of clean. Good. Like it. Now this one is an extrusion cut, right? So I'm going to do extrude. It knows it's that profile. I need it as a cut, which instantly makes it reverse direction because it's like, oh, if I'm going to cut, I got to go this way on this solid. And I do think it's the same cut. Isn't it an eighth of an inch in? I'm not sure if that's super clear. Let me bring that over here and take a look. The eighth of an inch. I'm looking for a dimension that might be. Maybe I just say it here in something. Oh, extrude cut profile 0.063 deep into part. So that's this one. I don't have it. I don't think I have it like dimensioned anywhere here. Oh yeah, I do right here. 0.063. There it is. 0.063. So I'm gonna change. This is gonna be 0.063 is what it says to cut it in. Okay. That's a good place. I'll save that real quick. I got that last sketch, like I said, which is maybe the worst one of the, I don't know, maybe not, but yeah, good place to take a break, right?